We're getting a rework of the Centurion? Does that mean I'm getting me shield? No, I'm not making a video until they get me the shield. No, I don't care. What? Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. Let's jump right into it. I personally have been waiting for the rework and remake of the Centurion for a very long time. As you know, I'm passionate for Roman history and I'm a sucker for anything, whether it be a Centurion, whether it be a legionary, whether it be anything that has to do with the Romans. And I've got to say that the Centurion in For Honor at first sort of disappointed me. It goes without saying that this is a fantasy game, so we don't really expect it to be historically accurate. But on the other hand, I am using a warrior who is called a Centurion. He wears obviously Roman-inspired armors and weapons and speaks and screams in Latin. So the fact that the weapons and armor that he's using is very inaccurate for the Roman era, I think the only way I can describe it, the only word I can use to describe that is the word incredibilis. The fact that he's now maskless, for me, is a big plus. I like the new helmet, I like the design, and to be honest, I think he kind of looks like me. Doesn't he? No? I like the overall design of the new helmet. It kind of reminds me of a mix between the helmet of a Praetorian and we could say the helmet of a legionary. One thing I would have liked to see in at least one of the possible choices as far as the helmets worn by the Centurions are concerned is something called a Brim, and it was present in many Roman helmets. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so if I was working with the art team at For Honor, Ubisoft, whatever it is, this is a very interesting piece of technology of the, I want to say, late Republican, early Imperial period in Rome that very easily and without adding any noticeable weight improves dramatically the resistance and defensive capability of a Roman helmet. See, what the Brim does is that it basically reinforces the overall skull and front of the helmet. You have to imagine that any blow coming directly towards the front of the helmet is going to impact, depending on the force with which it comes. It might still damage the person wearing the helmet, even if it doesn't cut through the metal itself. That is because of all the force transmitted to the spinal cord. Now, the addition of the Brim sort of disperses the energy, making it for a much more efficient and functional design. Now, some later Roman helmets even had 4 cross-section brims on the top of the helmet during the Dacian Wars, for example, so that would be cool to see as well. But not all Roman helmets had these things. For example, this is a Republican Montefortino helmet. Now, even though this helmet was used during the Republic, it was also used during the Empire, because we don't have to imagine that the moment a new design is created, released, fabricated, it doesn't mean that the entirety of the Roman army and all the legions are going to adopt the new technology, particularly not immediately. Many people, even in imperial times, all the way up to the 1st century AD, were still using these. Now, this one specifically is made of brass. Some originals would have been made of bronze. Generally speaking, archaeologists tend to refer to these kind of helmets as being made of copper alloy for reasons that I might go into with a dedicated video that I'm actually preparing about metals like iron, bronze, steel, brass and whatnot. But just to give you an idea, when we say bronze in an historical perspective, it's not always the same as modern bronze in terms of the actual alloy and its constituents. I'll get more into that with a dedicated video. But as you can see, this specific kind of helmet, goodness gracious, my hair is crazy, does not have a brim. So I'm not saying that all helmets should have a brim, but definitely the imperial kind of helmets and even like the Coolus type should. And it would be good to see that even in a fantasy situation, because they make sense and they look badass. Talking about the helmet, one last thing I'd like to say is this helmet that we see now here has solid cheek plates. That's not a problem, but it would be nice to have another version with foldable cheek plates. This kind of design, so the idea of cheek plates that are movable, is so Roman that it would just be perfect for this character, because it makes marching a lot easier. Simply because if the cheek plates are solid and in place all the time, you have to either wear the helmet the entire time or maybe just put it back a little bit like the Greeks did. But the Romans having foldable cheek plates plates, they can literally wear the helmet on their bosom, because of course the cheek plates, they fold inside, and they can get nice and fresh air when they're out of combat and they are marching. After a battle, if the barbarians managed to beat the Romans, as they would be looting from the dead Roman legionaries, of course they would loot the weapons, they would loot armor, and they would start wearing the helmets, but they would remove the cheek plates. That's something we know. Enemies of Rome did this. Now, there are a few reasons archaeologists came up with. We don't really 100% know why they did that. One possibility is that they considered them to be useless, although in my opinion this one is kind of weird because they do give some reasonable protection. The one that I find to be more accredited is because they just looked too Roman. So they refused to wear helmets with cheek plates because it would make them look too much like the Romans, which of course could be a problem in combat. With the Romans, if everyone looks the same, it's going to be a problem. But probably was mostly a hatred, a cultural rejection of something that looked too Roman. Now I'd like to have a look at the actual breastplate and shoulders. The thing that I noticed, I was hoping for a more historically accurate, and the reason why I'm saying more historically accurate is because I watched some videos and I've seen the interviews to the art director, and he said that he wanted to bring in a sort of gear, to use like a lame term, equipment that looked more historically accurate. That's exactly what they said, so it's not me. And I know that a lot of people always get mad at these sort of videos, evaluations of video games, so they say, hey, it's a video game, leave it, it doesn't matter, it doesn't need to be historically accurate. But I'm actually basing this video on what the art director said with this rework of the Centurion. They said they wanted to go for a more historically accurate representation. The game already offers a wide range of sort of breastplates or body armor, torso armor. We have got the muscolata, which would be the armor that looks like muscles, and it covers both. It's made of usually two halves, breastplate and backplate together. We know that those were used definitely usually by officers, but again, he's a centurion anyway. He is supposed to be an officer, so we could, generally speaking, as far as we know, I would imagine that most centurions would have been wearing hamata, so male. But hey, if you were a rich centurion, maybe a primus pilus, perhaps you would have been able to afford even a muscolata, perhaps later on in your career. Generally speaking, those were worn by high-level officers, but there is that. It's still cool to see that in the game. Or you have something that resembles a lorica segmentata or lorica laminata. I personally have a lot to say about this, because already the choice, the way they represented this lorica segmentata inspired armor, which is of course the one I choose to wear, I'm not a big fan of. I mean, I'm glad that they have something that resembles a segmentata, because that's my favorite kind of Roman armor. And it's also the most iconic, although it wasn't the most used armor by Roman legionaries. Mail would be, so-called chainmail would have been the norm, if you look at the entire spectrum of Roman era. But this is but this one, it would be my favorite. And in the game, first you see it has leather straps in the front and the back. That's not inaccurate. There were some kinds of segmentata, usually they're called calcrise or calcrise, I have no idea how to pronounce it, but the calcrise type has this kind of leather straps. I don't like it. It's the sort of armor that I like the least. I would have rather they made a replica of a Corbridge Type A, Corbridge Type B, even a Newstead, the one found in Scotland, that I would have preferred those with either the hooks or two leather straps here and one leather strap here. But hey, their choice, whatever, that's okay. But one problem I have with the segmentata that we have in game already is the fact that it's divided in 4 sections. Real segmentata is divided into halves. As you know, a segmentata is made of girth hoops, usually made of iron or very low carbon steel, in some cases sometimes even sandwiched plates of both iron and steel. But it's 2 halves. This kind of armor does not have the need to be divided into 4 sections. And the moment you divide it into many sections, then there definitely has to be overlapping, because when you have 2 sections, particularly with plate, and they obviously meet, the point in which the plates meet must overlap. This is how it works. It was like this in the classical period, it was like this in the medieval period, and this is a common technique that you find it basically everywhere in the world. In video games, however, it very often happens, whether it be plate armor or whether it be segmentata Roman armor, they always have plates meet together at one point, in the exact point, and then they stay this way. But if it was a real armor, this would be very non-functional. First, because unless you have like a lot of pressure, which you can't really have, any blade could go through the gap you're creating. And talking about gaps, and again, gaps are what you don't want in armor. Any movement where you turn your torso, perhaps you're fighting, would mean creating small openings, which would be weak points. And imagine if that happens in the very front of your armor or the sides, it would be suicidal. The moment instead you have plates overlap this way, you are not only making sure there is absolutely zero gaps, whether you move or not, but also you are doubling the layers of protection, and therefore you are turning a possible weak spot into a strong area. So you're basically doubling your chances, it probably even more if you look at it mathematically, of survival if someone was trying to pierce your armor in that very section. So this is one concern that I have with armor in video games. It looks like something that is supposed to look good, but not something that would function. And of course, another problem that I have with armor is plate thickness. But if we look at this breastplate specifically, you notice that you don't really see the muscles. It's very plain. Now that's okay. It's not unhistorical. It's just less common for the Roman perspective. You see, when you look at musculata armor, so muscular cuirass, can't pronounce that. It's been like 5 years I've been saying that on my videos, still can't pronounce it. Muscle cuirass has styles. The Greek version tends to be less decorated, but the Romans loved decorations. So would this be historically inaccurate? No, probably would be the sort of muscular cuirass that someone who doesn't have much money would buy. Well, not as much money as a general, shouldn't really say general legatus, for example. So it's okay, but for a Roman, if he had the money, it would have enjoyed having a lot of nice decoration. So I hope that for high-tier armor, gear, to use gaming terminology, I hope that they allow for a lot of decoration, even three-dimensional decoration of, I don't know, the story of the history of the emperor and the glory of Rome and that sort of very nice stuff. To conclude, I'd like to mention the thing that I started the video with, the shield. I was really hoping that in this Centurion rework they would add the scutum, and I understand the reasons why they didn't. I would imagine it's because you already have quite a lot of heroes with shields in this game, but the Roman shield is really different from a medieval shield, both in the way it's held, in the way it's used, and also in the way you would use it to strike. For example, you could raise it and strike with the bottom rim, or you can punch with it. There are a lot of things that you can do, and I believe it would have been interesting. The very first time when I saw the Centurion in this game without a shield, it kind of made it strange to look at. To be honest, I would have preferred that they gave him two gladi, and you'd be like, why two gladi? Because at least Dimakairus, the sort of gladiator that used two gladi, existed. So perhaps it could have been a Centurion who, for whatever reason, was also a former gladiator, or perhaps the son of a gladiator who got freedom. I mean, you could have found some law to justify, to find a justification for the usage of dual wielding, although again, in battle is kind of stupid, but hey, it's fantasy. It would have been nice to see a Roman shield, and I was hoping to see that, but unfortunately they didn't do it. I'm still hoping for it. We'll have to see. But let me know, would you like to see the Centurion wielding a shield to have an actual very effective gladius scutum combination, which would of course justify the usage of the shorter sword? Or would you rather have the Centurion wield, for example, a spada, so a longer sword, justifying in that case, because of the reach, the lack of the shield, at least to a certain extent? Definitely let me know in the comments below. Anyways, all in all, I can't really speak for the way you use the Centurion because I haven't played it much. I just, logged in the game, had a look at the Centurion, played a little bit in the training ground. I think I kind of noticed that it looks to me like the kick is faster than it used to be. Perhaps, I'm not sure. I've got to say that in this game, playing against the Centurion is really a pain in the neck. So I hate the Centurion where you've got to fight him, but I enjoy having one in my group, particularly when I'm using like the Jormungandr and I've got like a Centurion who puts someone on the ground and I hit them with the hammer. It's a lot of fun to do that. So anyways, it's good. Do you like the Centurion as a character? I am reasonably happy with the rework. I think they can still do better, because if you look at the shoulder plates, I mean, I hate them. I've got to say, there is not one set of shoulder plates, shoulder guards that I like. They look bulky, they look massive. I mean, this guy looks like he's got like some sort of gutters from the wall of the building put on top of his shoulders, like he cut it in half and put it on. I don't know. It just looks weird. It looks too thick, it looks too big, it looks bulky, and it, most importantly, it does not look Roman at all. Alright, Noble Ones, well, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember, thumbs up, and if you're not yet members of this community, become a Noble One. Subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.